Gaming and BS episode 115. Gods and RPGs. Welcome to Gaming and BS, a tabletop RPG podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sean. And Brett,
I'm Brett, who is on mute for 2 seconds there. Yes, I'm Brett. Welcome to the show, folks. Good God.
Like, oh my God.
What happens when I go on vacation?
Like, where'd you go?
Fell off the planet.
Welcome back to the planet.
Yeah. How's it going, Sean?
Good. Okay.
Sean's been putting in a new floor or new flooring in the house, and I've been traipsing through the woods, hunting and dragging my father's deer. So I'm tired, although I'm sure Sean is just as tired.
Man, I have to pop ibuprofen, man, because last weekend I got it started and somewhat finished, but anyways, it is no joke.
No, especially for those of us with these soft little typist hands. We don't.
Sensitive.
Yeah, I can change my own oil. I can do all this stuff, but I don't often because I normally just don't. So anyway. Arg. All right, Sean. I guess we should get into it, man.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into Random Encounter.
Yeah.
Element of the show where we field emails, voicemails, and comments from social media.
Should I do the first one?
I'll
do the first one.
You should do the first one.
John commented on our website. He says, "Hey guys, I recently found you via the boys over at Misdirected Mark and have been enjoying the podcast." Well, thank you, John. Awesome. So here's a topic I'd like to hear you guys talk about: law versus chaos. I know a lot of people may think chaos equals evil and law equals good, but I'd disagree. I largely blame Games Workshop. Fuck you, Games Workshop. That's John, not me. To a lesser extent to the works of Moorcock. And if people think law is purely good, let's examine the 20th century laws, aka pre-suffrage voting laws, segregation laws, etc. In my mind, there's much more nuance, more shades of gray. So how would you approach law and chaos? Thanks for the pod, John. I'll tell you, John, Sean and I have talked about alignment a while back, but I think this is a different topic. I kind of like this because even if you take the alignment component out of it and just take it from a fundamental, how does it impact the world? I think it may actually tie in a little bit to the gods topic that Sean and I are going to be getting into in a bit here. So I'm going to table this one and I'm going to add it to our list. I think we might have to grab onto it, Sean, and add it into maybe next episode or one after that.
Yeah, we can do that. Law versus chaos.
Exactly.
Chaos.
Next one's you, sir.
All right. Angela Murray writes, "Hey guys. A couple years ago, I was running Monster of the Week for some inebriated friends.
It sounds like college gaming to me. That's what that sounds like.
It sounds like a good time already.
Exactly. Carry on.
When I pressed them for a theme for their group, someone suggested they be silver-haired retirees that fought vampires, i.e. Maud the Vampire Slayer."
I love it. Golden Girls versus vampires. That type of thing.
That's a good mashup.
I like that.
Half the group that said this thought this was fantastic, but the other half was uninterested, so we didn't get to try it. As one of the uninterested players said, quote, "I'm not interested in playing a game where one of my superpowers is overcoming incontinence."
Oh.
End quote. Okay.
I guess.
The idea could be fun with the right players, though, so I'll probably give it a try someday. Okay, that's good. I would play that.
I would totally play it. I think the other component is that instead of saying, overcoming incontinence, don't go that far to the nursing home component. Think of the movie Red, Retired Extremely Dangerous. Think about that. Everybody in there is retired. They're older. They're 60s plus and still very, very dangerous and very, very capable. So I think it would work.
There was another one shot I played. I think it was GURPS that had a mixed cast of retired superheroes living in Florida and some of their grandchildren visiting for spring break. That was a fun game with a cool mix of young and cocky punks with the old and irritated codgers.
That would be fun too. That could be a good time.
You mentioned the wide array of options for playing teenagers or younger characters. I think that's because the coming of age story is such a strong aspect of collective story / myth foundation. So during our age and role-playing games episode a few back, I was talking about how Brett and I seem to be emphasizing the aging in RPGs versus playing younger. Like, why don't a lot of games play younger, can play younger, and a lot of them don't play older.
Yes, it's kind of that whole concept of Monster Hearts and other games that are what's the one, Velvet Glove and a couple others.
Bubblegum Shoe.
Bubblegum Shoe.
Yeah.
There's no wheelchairs.
Right.
We don't have what is it, rocking chairs and instead of rocker boys and vending machines. I'm trying to come up with another variation of wheelchairs and something. It'll come up. Anyway, keep going. I'll come up with it.
So, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I think that's because the coming of age is such a strong aspect of our collective story myth foundation, from Harry Potter to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and so many in between. We love stories of young people finding themselves and crossing the line between childhood and adulthood. I can absolutely see that. On the other side of the coin, though, we're all a little afraid of getting old and dying, so I understand why there aren't many stories or games that revolve around the experience, wisdom, and frailty that comes with growing old. There are some rich subjects buried in there, though, for gamers brave enough to dive in. Yep, I totally
absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Wish I could have made Gamehole Con maybe next year. Great show as always.
Thank you, Angela. That's very nice of you.
Yes.
I do, though. I know after we did the aging episode, we talked about it. We've had between Angela and a couple other folks that have written in. It's really got me thinking, especially for a con game, a one-shot type of thing, a con game type of setup saying, hey, we're going to play retirees here. We're going to play this older group of folks or whatever. I think there's some cool stuff that's definitely buried in there. I didn't think about the, the fear of age and dying and so forth, but that may well be an undercurrent that keeps people from doing it, that you just don't always, subconscious, I guess, as I would say.
Yeah, it could be one of those, hey, I try to escape all that stuff. So the last thing I want to do is game in that world. I don't know.
Talking about how old I am. Yeah.
Right. Next one I'll read.
Okay, cool. It was a short one.
Yeah. So Josh is the gentleman that hits us up for Gamehole Con Uber.
Oh, that's right.
Instead of making Brett shave his magnificent beard, what if each person who donates got one hair from his chinny chin? Maybe they can specify dark or light too.
Light.
Hey, so if you are,
there's getting to be more light in here than there is dark.
If you are not a patron, that's what he's referring to, one of our patron levels. If you're not a patron and you'd like one whiska from Brett's beardom, and you want to specify, I think we can
light or dark.
We'll pluck
or
that.
If you want to get on the official, is there's a certain level in which I will shave. So
yes, but very good suggestion from Josh.
That's funny. Oh, Josh, I'll get you back, sir. All right, Goblin's Henchman wrote in. Hi, BSers. Just got done listening to Bonus BS 16, Mark Miller and Traveler, and Bonus BS 17, WotC and 5e D&D. I found both episodes remarkable. I understand if you don't want to read this post out as it contains a dissenting view. Dude, that is totally fine. Yeah, Henchman, we love dissent.
We need some dissenting view.
Yeah. I found the two episodes polar opposites. Though I've not played either system, Traveler and 5e, I found myself inspired by one and quite the opposite by the other. Mark was overflowing with ideas and new content. Not a sci-fi guy, but boy, did he make me interested. I'm sorry to say I felt the WotC approach stagnant and bereft of creativity. The approach was safe to the point of a standstill. Any creative spark left in their product seems to lie in the legacy of the material they have dissected and repackaged. At best, on the WotC approach seemed akin to rebooting old wine. Rebottling old wine. At worst, their approach seemed as if they were taste testing a new sausage, looking at the lowest common denominator and going on with that. I know 5e has been well received by many, but can it really add to the hobby in the long term by simply airbrushing and repackaging the daring ideas of others? Is this why WotC is on the go slow publication path? As once the pantry is pillaged, the cupboard will be bare. Okay, I admit my knowledge of 5e is thin. What I heard made me want to get out of my tatty old orange-spined AD&D books and give them a giant hug and give thanks to people who dared to have new ideas. Call me out, BSers, if I speak out of turn. On an up note, the DIY community is thriving and new ideas being put out there all the time. Thanks for hearing me out, Goblin's Henchman. Oh, and the PS. So, are you going to have a listener competition? New monster, weapon, trap, room? I think that's a damn good idea. Sean, I'll have to get some thought on that. But I'll tell you what, Henchman. Going back to, I agree. I did not make the Mark Miller one, so I downloaded it, and Sean got it. I agree. It was pretty cool. The WotC one is much more corporate, right? The guys have been trained. They have Hasbro, and they are very tight-lipped, closed mouth around what is or coming and what is not. The one thing that I have heard Perkins say on, he said last year, and he said again here, I don't believe it was quite as vocal in this panel. Last year's, Chris Perkins solo panel, I thought was better from just a raw information perspective. But Perkins has said, and other guys have stated this too, that they know for a fact that most people homebrew their D&D world. They know a lot of people do that. So I think a lot of what they're trying to do is publish things that anybody who is homebrewing or wants a big campaign can have access to. I don't know. I agree. There is a weird feeling for me too. I'm like, it's neat that you are repackaging something like Ravenloft. Great. You redid that for me. So I don't have to go on to the interweb and find out somebody who made a 5e hack of the original Ravenloft game. Although it actually wouldn't be all that hard. I think that the strength of 5e is the fact that you can get the 3 core books and you're done. I mean, really done. As far as the other books that they're putting out from adventures and so forth, they're really, you don't feel like if you don't have them, you're missing a critical part of the game. I think it's much more self-contained than it had been. But yeah, it's neat to hear them talk about rebooting stuff, or rebottling, as you say, Henchman, but I don't see anything new coming out of there. And that is, maybe that is a bad thing. Sean, what do you think about this here?
You know, it's a good observation. I sat in on both, obviously, and recorded both, and I think they're both different. Mark and the WotC folks, Traveler versus D&D. Just even how they ran their seminar was different. Now, going to the banking on the reboots and rebottling, yeah, I think it works. I think I might know what's coming up. My bet is on keep on the Borderlands. Like, I think that's coming. And I think that a majority of the proponents of the game are older. I think if you drew out the D&D crowd and you took everybody's age, the bell curve at the height would probably be somewhere around our age, Brett.
40s.
Yeah, I would say anywhere between 35 and 45 would probably be a good sweet spot.
And if you take something, before I lose a thought here, the do-it-yourself community is thriving, and that's a damn good point there, Henchman, because the DMs Guild and the people creating other stuff out there for it, again, that homebrew aspect of it is really, really strong in 5e, which is really cool. I think that my initial thought when I heard what they were going to do was going to be, because they had Pendleton Ward as somebody who was working with them, and Pendleton does Adventure Time, the wacky fun cartoon. I'm thinking that it could very well be something along the Planescape component, or as I bet Chris Steele, I bet him Greyhawk. I said something in Greyhawk is coming. Keeping the Borderlands would be, I think, instead of focusing wherever it is that they're doing, because they've stepped out of the realms with the Ravenloft one. I'm wondering if they're going to go to something in a different setting, right? I think the other piece though is that when I want to introduce my kids and I say, "Oh, I had a lot of fun playing Keeping the Borderlands. I had a lot of fun in the Against the Giant series, or oh wow, against the Temple of Elemental Evil, and I want to run that type of thing again. I think that'd be fun. And oh wow, I have Tiamat and this other adventure. That'd be cool. Holy shit, here we go. Boom, I can run 5e, the latest and greatest version of D&D with my kids or younger players or new players, and I don't have to perhaps if I sold my old collection or if I don't have them anymore, all that stuff is there. So to your point, Sean, I think the nostalgia, if you will, that component of it for men and women our age that are probably really strong in the D&D aspect of the hobby, maybe that's the reason, right? Because we're the ones buying it. Because we're like, oh, that was fun when I was a kid. I'd like to see what they've done with it or something along those lines. Is that where you're going, or am I?
Yes, I think there's a direct correlation with the demographic that play D&D and where they are in first edition AD&D primarily, and where we are today now. And I say where we are today now as in not only age, but disposable income. So, Brett, demographic-wise, not to get into a huge quagmire in demographics, but when you're about 40-ish, you are making probably as much money as you ever will. You are responsible for your parents as well as children. Like, I forgot what it's called. I can't remember what it's called, but that time in life is kind of, I don't know if it's necessarily called the sweet spot, but basically you're contributing the most than you ever will. Right, because as you start to get over that hump, it starts the downturn, right? And as
that makes sense.
As you're younger, you're coming up to that. So, having said that, Xers are making up that component, and there isn't a lot of them, but we have a lot of nostalgia that's based on that. And I think that if you and I sat down and went, man, wouldn't it be cool to roll out, Against the Giants, the Slavers, Temple of Elemental Evil, whatever it was that we really enjoyed playing when we were growing up, AD&D, whatever that is, whatever those memories are, whether we're still with the same group or not. And we wanted to talk to others that we have okay, I've moved on from my home group, I have a new group, or maybe I don't have a group and I'm going to start one, whatever that is. You can go back to some of those things, and then some of them may age better than others, but as they come out and say, hey, here's Keep on the Borderlands. Hey, here's Curse of Strahd. Here's the Giants and a tribute to the Giants series. Those things we can latch onto, and then we can pitch to other people because that's kind of our thing. The people that have come up and maybe not have started there, maybe they started in 4th edition and 3rd edition, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they may not know those classics as well as, or they may not look upon those the same way we do, like, oh, that's Temple Elemental Evil, big deal. It's kind of like old TV shows. Like
absolutely. Last year Perkins mentioned this in the seminar that we captured. We still have that one, the one from last year's Game Will Come, the Chris Perkins solo one. One of the things that D&D wants to have is a shared experience. So that way you can say, I played Keep on the Borderlands. I played the Curse of Strahd. I played this. And it used to be, hey, did you ever play the Tomb Horrors? No, I heard that thing's brutal. Oh my God, it's brutal. So when you talk to one of the old grognards and say, hey, I just did Temple of Elemental Evil, and they say 5e version. Yeah. Did you play the original? Yes, I did, says Brett. Oh, wow, cool. Here's what this one did. Was it different? Was it this? It draws a connection between the new and the old, and so on and so forth. I think, though, a piece of what the henchman brought out here is, can it really add to the hobby in the long term by simply airbrush? I don't know if D&D is really looking to necessarily add to the gaming hobby. I don't know if that's necessarily a charter thing for them to do. It's a marketing, it's a property, right? They want to properly market the property to make money. I get that. I totally do. I think if nothing else, it's still a gateway drug for other games. Sure, there's a ton of people who are going to get into it, play it, and never play anything else. Fine. Other guys are going to be like most of our listeners, Sean and I, and they're going to end up with a shelf for gigabytes of PDFs of other game systems that you've picked up and want to try. Excuse me. So I think whether it adds anything brandy new to the gaming component or not, I don't know if I care. I don't look to D&D to be the that's not my groundbreaker. D&D is not the place I expect innovation in systems mechanics or anything like that. I don't look to D&D to do that. And I don't believe, this is just, again, Brett talking, I don't think that's their charter. I don't think that's what they're there to do. And if they want something a little more innovative, they're like, fine, that's what John Wick is for. That's what, Robin Laws and all those other folks. And Jason Morningstar and all those folks. Chris and Phil are building stuff over at Encoded Designs, from the Misdirected Mark crew when they're doing the Hydro Hackers and stuff. Those are the folks in Apocalypse World. That's where our innovation is going to come from. D&D's not looking to innovate per se.
No,
right? I don't look at Ford to tell me what the new greatest innovation. I'm looking at Tesla to tell me something cool.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, Brett. That's a good summation there. I like that. And speaking of Traveler and Mark Miller, I got to admit that obviously Traveler's been around for quite some time. I don't play it very often. It's a game I'd like to get into. It kind of perplexes me, which is weird. It shouldn't, but it does. 5e Traveler, even though they put it out and Mark wrote a novel, I don't think what he had to say drove me to go, wow, I got to play some Traveler. Because I think for him, the way he kind of spoke about the game was knowing that players they played it already. Like they know about it. To me, I mean, that seminar that he gave was not to somebody who's never played Traveler.
He was there to do Q&A for people who were like, oh my God, Miller's here. He never goes to cons anymore. I've been a Traveler fan for 20 years. I want to ask him some questions.
Right. Yeah. And his format was very Q&A, right? Like he didn't come in with a script. He
had no agenda.
No agenda. He was just going to be there. Came with the price tag of his admittance. Very nice guy, Mark Miller. I was very impressed with him and his demeanor. Told him we were recording it just to get it out there to his fans. And, had I known maybe what I do now and I was tuned into that community a little bit better, I would have pinged the community for Q&A and I would have just moderated the panel myself, which is something we can consider down the road, Brett. But
yeah, it's not a bad. I tried to do that just before I did the Ed Greenwood interview, tried to get some questions from different BSers out there and bug folks, but I think that's a damn good idea. We can talk to Alex and the guys about that next year.
Yeah. But very cool. Very good. Thanks for emailing us because that's definitely spurs some conversation and opinions. So thanks for doing that. And then we'll have to find out from the community if there's an interest in doing a new monster weapon trap or room. I would be interested in doing that, but probably making it very, like, I know that Paizo does the RPG Superstar kind of competition. I would probably want to do it like, there's also a place, Twitter account. I think it's the Star Wars one, like Star Wars RPG plots or something, or an adventure in a tweet or something. It may even be like, what can you do in 140 characters or less?
Yeah, and then we got to build it, put it out there, get people to vote on it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Cool.
But that's something.
Good stuff.
Yeah, by all means.
That was good. That was a good perspective too, Henchman. So Sean and I both appreciate that. That's good stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Next one, over to you, sir.
Christopher emails us, BSers, I need your help. You're my only hope. This time I'm not writing to give you some big mechanical widget that I designed, although I could. Did I tell you about my crafting mechanic? No, actually, I'm writing because it sounds like you guys are heavily into cons and I may have stepped in it. So one night recently, I was thinking about what I wanted to run at StrategicCon, Southern Cal's awesome 3 times a year gaming convention.
Who?
I think the Happy Jackers go to StrategicCon. I think they're always pimping that one.
I think they do. I believe they do.
Yep, Jib and Jib. I know Jib has listened to us. Nice chair. Here we go. I already decided on a session I've played a few times using Powered by the Apocalypse. I'm not worried about that one. I also wanted to do a D&D session as I usually, but wanted to come up with something interesting and non-trivial. So I had a bourbon, but did you have a scotch?
And one bourbon, one scotch, and one beer.
And did you have a beer? And was sitting around poking at my D&D stuff. And then I thought, dude, I could just run a session where players hit Ravenloft and kill Strahd. So I polished my bourbon. Still doesn't say he had a scotch or a beer. You're muted, buddy.
I was just bemoaning the fact that he didn't have more than one bourbon.
I know. Sallied forth and created an event at Strategicon. The next morning, I thought, oh shit. I looked at Curse of Strahd. How the hell am I supposed to get players to raid the castle on kill Strahd in 4 hours?
Good luck, sucker.
Yeah, man, you can't. Curse of Strahd, dude, that's like, people are playing that thing like once a week for like a year before they get to Ravenloft.
So if you want to, if you're a way to do this might well be to get the original Castle Ravenloft module, which I believe is out there in PDF format at drive-thru. I believe it is. Get a hold of that and look that over. And you might have to do some, if you want to use 5e, you might have to do some tweaks or changes perhaps to rules, or use the, what do I want to say, the monster stats and all that stuff from the Curse of Strahd, the new piece, and kind of fold it in there. But you're going to have to abbreviate the shit out of the Curse of Strahd. Maybe jack up the players' classes, something, give them a long kind of a preamble. Hey, you're here. You're ready to do this thing. Let's go kill a goddamn vampire. You're going to have to cut stuff, man. I have not read the original Castle Ravenloft in years, so I don't know if that one would actually play faster, but it might be worth taking a look at to see if you can find any shortcuts to get them from point A to point B, like into the castle. Go. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Curse of Strahd is not the model you want to look at overall, because it's a sandbox. So you're gonna have to give these guys some direction.
That's why I was thinking the original one. I mean, the original one is sandboxy enough, if I recall correctly, but it's going to be it's a eighth of the side page count, for Christ's sake. You know, it should be faster, I would hope, to punch through.
Yeah. So I would say, depending on how if you want to just have them raid the castle, just make them whatever level. I mean, it also depends. Like, are you gonna run 5e? Did he say? I don't think so. He didn't mention the addition. But if you,
no, I think I'm assuming he wanted to do 5e,
right,
based on the fact he pulled out Curse of Strahd. So, but like I say, even if you took the original and simply used the stat blocks and such from Curse, you should be able to put something together there. I've not read Curse of Strahd, so I don't know if there is a decent way to shortcut that sucker. I have no clue.
Dude, you're going to have to, the party is going to have a few things before they go there, items and levels, make them there, tell them that they're in the freaking castle and it's go time. They're sitting in front of Strahd, whatever, how you set it up. And then they've been sent to rid it. Like, maybe they're following a cleric and the cleric's like, hey, you guys are with me and we're going to go rid this evil. But I don't know how long it takes to get through the damn castle. 4 hours is probably at least. So, but figure it out. You know, the players don't have to map it all out. So they don't, you can make it very simple. 4 encounters, 5 encounters.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, the other piece here, folks, is anyone listening to this, any of our listeners who grabs a hold of this and has an idea, email it to Sean and I, post it in our Google Plus community, hit us up on the Facebook group, wherever you can find us, and we will be happy to pass your ideas or thoughts over to Christopher. Because if somebody's like, oh, fuck, dude, I've done that. I crushed it. I did this thing. All I had to do is take page 5, 6, 7, 8, hack this out, done. Maybe somebody's done this. I have no idea. If you have or have a good idea, let us know. We'll do what we can to get it into Christopher's hands.
The easiest way is just they get invited to Castle Ravenloft as guests. They're at dinner.
As dinner.
And then they can't leave.
Yeah, it's a Hotel California approach.
There you go.
All right. Next one. Carson emailed us. Hello, I'm a new listener to your show. I've started episode 1 and I'm currently on 33. See, Carson already strikes me as an individual who knows how to follow directions. Carson, I like you. I like to listen to you guys as I work for General Motors, so the day goes by quicker. I listen to about 6 to 8 episodes a day right now. Holy crap! That's a lot. That's a lot of Brett and Sean all at once.
That's a lot of eating up some podcasts there. Nom nom nom.
I am new to the RPG scene. I'm currently GMing for my group with Imperial Assault, which is an awesome game. I know the show is helping me become a better GM and making me understand a lot of stuff. Dude, thank you very much, Carson. That is very, very flattering. Continues with, I love the show so far. I do need some help, though. I'm wanting to start expanding my RPG books, and I'm looking at Savage Worlds Deadlands. What books do I need to start with as for a hard copy over PDF? What other Savage Worlds books would you recommend? Also, I don't like you guys, Green Bay Packer fans. Go Lions! Thank you from your listener in the great state of Michigan. All right, Carson. We're going to have to talk about your preference of football teams, but apart from that, you seem like a stand-up individual, and we will overlook your Lions fandom there and do our best to help you. So if you want to do Savage Worlds and you want to do Deadlands, there's the Deadlands Reloaded is the Savage Worlds core book for Deadlands. I have that. I have a hard copy of it. It's a great book. It's gorgeous, and you don't need anything else for that. That could get you going right there. Sean, you have played more Savage Worlds than I have, apart from the core book. Do you have any other Savage Worlds books that you would recommend?
I am not wholly familiar with Deadlands. I got a bundle from the original Deadlands. So just so you are aware, Carson, that there's classic Deadlands and then there's Deadlands Reloaded, like Brett mentioned. They play quite differently, even though Savage Worlds kind of comes from that original Deadlands. But I've talked to people that have played both, and they have strong opinions about one or the other. So just Shane
Hensley, the lead man from Pinnacle, will tell you flat out they are two different games. If you like one, stick with the original. If you like the Savage Worlds approach, go Reloaded.
Yeah,
he's.
Yep. So that's just something to be aware of, because I got the bundle with a butt ton of original Deadlands. Plays a little bit different, like Brett said. Having said that, I have Weird Wars 2. I have Reality Blurs' Agents of Oblivion. They
also have Reality Blurs has a Cthulhu one. I have a PDF of that. Now I know what you'd said here, Carson, that you like books versus hard copy over PDF. What you may need to do is do like a print on demand thing. I don't know how easy it will be to get hardcovers, or I should say hard copies of a lot of these. Just kind of throwing that out there.
You should be able to order all the Deadlands Reloaded stuff, I think, right off of their website. Well, they've got them in PDF on their website. I know you can get hard copies, but yeah, they're not, unless you got a really robust local game store that carries a lot of different inventory, it probably isn't going to show up on the shelf.
And the other thing from a Worlds perspective, if you like old school swords and sorcery with the Savage Worlds approach, they do have Lankhmar, right? So they've got Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, Lankhmar. That's a good one. East Texas University is very popular. That one, you'll see Carl Kiesler runs a bunch of that. If you catch him on Google Plus, he's got some great miniatures and so forth for that. Let's see here. Shit, they've got Space 1889. What's that? Riffs is
Riffs, yeah.
Savage Riffs. There is so much Savage stuff out there.
So Carson, with Savage Worlds, so we're addressing your what books do I need? Other Savage Worlds books would you recommend? So get the core book. That's going to be $10 out of pocket. Get a couple copies. That's the deluxe Savage Worlds deluxe edition. You're going to need that as core rules. I would get if you want to run fantasy, get the fantasy companion. If you're going to run science fiction, get the science fiction companion. Those are both done by Pinnacle. And they complement whatever you're looking at. Some of the things we're talking about, Brett and I, are very setting centric. So they have hindrances and a lot of different rules, but they're really based around the specific setting that you're playing in. So Last Parsec is another Pinnacle setting that they have, which is science fiction. It's almost kind of like Traveler, Star Frontiers-ish, if you know Star Frontiers from the olden days. Interface, then you have core Pinnacle stuff, and then you have third-party licensed settings and books. Some of the ones we mentioned are not core, they're not Pinnacle, and some are. Some other ones, third-party Interface Zero is a good one if you like cyberpunk. God, there's just so many.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. If Christian, Sexy Voice Serrano, or Ron Blessing, any of those guys, and I'll tell you what, the Mongrel is a big Savage Worlds guy too. If you gents or ladies out there who know anything about Savage Worlds and play a lot of it, and think there's a good place to start with for Carson, hit it up in the community or send us an email, and we'll get that in Carson's hands. But honestly, I think the Deadlands is great. Deadlands Reloaded, you can stay in the Savage Worlds place. I love Lankmar. I'm a big Fafnir Grey Mouser fan, so I would suggest sticking in there. If you like riffs, you can get in on that. Do you need the companion books for those components? Not necessarily. The Savage World Core has enough to get you, if you want to run your own homebrew fantasy, has enough in there. You don't necessarily need the fantasy companion. You could get started and see if you like it and get more. God, there's so much stuff.
Yeah, it really does depend on what you want to, what kind of game you want to play. There's King Solomon, if you like.
Solomon Kane.
Solomon King. Why did I keep King Solomon?
Solomon Kane.
Solomon Kane. Yeah. But there's all kinds of different ones. I mean, and you get, what's Fanon's?
Oh, the, shit. He's doing Savage Rifts now. He did, totally blanking on it. It's the big fantasy goddamn thing. Shit. I backed it too, and I can't remember it.
Anyways.
Damn it. Anyway, there's a ton of stuff. I'll tell you what, Carson, if you have a genre that you would like, hey, I want to play Savage Worlds Fantasy. I want to play Savage Worlds Deadlands. Well, go Deadlands Reloaded. If you want to play Savage Worlds Sci-Fi, let us know, and or hit the communities up in our Google Plus or our Facebook groups. And some listener out there who's a Savage Worlds nut will be more than happy to point you at some cool stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in. Thanks for listening. And I'm not a big football fan. I have my team, but I am not even following them, and I think they got the best record in the NFL. I'll just leave it at that.
I haven't been following the Packers lately either. I've been too busy prepping for EverCon and hunting as of late.
Yeah.
All right. Last one's for you, sir.
Aaron Lacey. Hello, everyone. This G+. This being my first post, I'll try to make it as organized as possible. I'm very new to the RPG world. We promise not to ruin it for you, or try not to ruin it for you.
We will try not to. Although, if you've listened this far, we may have already done that. And if so, we apologize.
We don't want to drive you away. Stay here no matter what we say.
Exactly.
Even though it has been something in my interests for years, being a young woman, nobody ever took me serious.
Oh, that's disappointing. Agreed. Boo. That's terrible. Keep going.
Firstly, I would like to say this group has really helped me with putting myself out there and actually diving into this beautiful world.
Awesome.
Although I love RPGs, it does end up making me worried I'm messing up, possibly due to unforgiving party members, but I'm just wondering if it gets easier. The anxiety of playing wrong tends to take me out of the immersion, and I feel it may do the same for those I am playing with.
Okay.
Again, thank you for having this group for us. It gives me an opportunity to have the opportunity I have never had before. Being outcast for not looking like the type or simply for being a girl had kept me from playing, but now I feel like I am able to dip my toes in the water a bit more. P.S. Living in Madison and not being able to go to Gamehole Con was very painful. Hello to all the Wisco BSers.
Sweet. Well, Aaron, I'll tell you, my if you've listened to us, you've heard me talk about my daughter Ilana. She's my youngest. She's 8, and I got her a copy of Little Wizards. It's a kids role playing game. She's read that. She's going to run that for my son AJ and I over Christmas break is what she's planning to do. And one of the things that I do with her to help point her at the right folks and say, hey, look, just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you don't belong in this hobby, right? Sean and I have talked about this in the inclusion episode and so forth. But I look at people like Angela, we've got Jen Brinkman, Satine Phoenix. There's a ton of amazing people that we've met. I mean, the
Stacey Delfano.
Stacey Delfano. Yeah. I mean, just
Contessa.
tons of cool people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Contessa's out there. She's a super geek. Those ladies, yep. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Emily and Senda.
Yes.
For those
I
that,
would go.
For those that are forgetting names.
I'm just rolling out there. But so Aaron, if you have an unforgiving group, right? If you've got a group of people that are giving a little crap because you're doing it wrong, right? First off, there's really no doing it wrong, right? So it's hard, right? Because I have that anxiety too. When I ran at Gamehole Con this last one, I was worried, like, what if I fuck something up? What if I did something wrong in my Warhammer game or my Middle Earth game? God knows if anybody would ever even notice, because these games are dead and haven't been in production for a while. But I don't want to wreck something. I don't want to wreck somebody's fun. As a game master, if you're running, if you're the one that are helping present, if you are having fun and you're not, just overrunning everybody else's fun, if you're having fun because the group is having fun, it's going to work. It does get easier. I can tell you that flat right now. It's going to be hard at the beginning. You're going to try things. It's going to fail. And that's totally okay. And if I will tell you this right now, if you have people that you're gaming with, I don't know how many people in your group, Aaron, say you got 4 people, 2 of them are being pricks. 2 of them, men and women, just are being complete pricks to you. And those folks give you crap every time you make a mistake or something like that. I would seriously consider maybe not playing with those folks as often. Playing with the other 2 people, getting yourself more confident, working your way through it, people who will support you as you game and continue to push forward. That's going to help you build your confidence more than trying to figure out what's going to make Sean and Brett not get mad at me this week. I mean, you don't need that kind of pressure, because that's horseshit. So I know that's not easy to do, especially if you're friends or family with these folks. But, and I don't know that situation, Aaron, but that's just off the top of my head, that's just a thing I could think of. Sean, what are you thinking?
Man, do not let these assholes drive you out of a hobby that is enjoyable for you. If it's something you love,
amen to that.
God bless America, and a-holes and fellow BSers that are not a-holes, and you witness this stuff, please, I don't know, put us in check when we get out of line or something. We say dumb shit sometimes, and it comes across improperly and inappropriately. And, not all of us are crazy shitheads, but sometimes we say shitheaded things. But
yeah,
God, man, Aaron, whatever you do, just do not jump the hobby because you're running into a couple dweebs that aren't encouraging you to do things, or even just. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's the style of play, whatever it is. I mean, I've played in games with guys too that are just like, it's just not it's not the way I want to play. That's not that they're playing wrong. It's just maybe not the way I prefer. I mean, maybe they're really gonzo and everything's kind of slapstick comedy and it's really light. And that's cool and that's okay. But it may not be the way I really want to play my game or whatever game I'm in. And I've had lots of different game groups, and I don't know everybody that I'm playing with all the time. I mean, Brett knows Kevin. I've never played with Kevin before. Wayne Humfleet, same thing. Like, we invite him into the game thinking it's going to be fine, and it is, luckily.
It is. Wayne's great.
Right, yes. Well, for the most part.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it doesn't, just because you're playing with these folks now does not mean you have to for the rest of your God-given life.
We've talked about this before, but Sean, you're dead right, because there's online gaming, lots of different places to meet and connect with people. If you're interested, the Contessa thing is, as Sean mentioned, I didn't even think about that. That's an awesome way to get out there and run games.
I don't know if she's running or not. I don't know.
No, well, I mean, I don't know. My assumption is, well, you talk about Erin. Erin's definitely running.
Is she running?
Yeah, she is. Yeah. Or even, I strike that. I guess she says even the anxiety of playing wrong. So, Erin, here's the other piece now. If you're playing, right, and unless the game master is the asshole giving you crap for doing it wrong or whatever the case is, you might, I hate to say this, but it's not easy to find groups. It is not. And I will say that out. But if you've got a group of people, like 4 or 5 of you, and half of them roll their eyes, go, oh my God, Erin doesn't know what she's doing again. If they're giving you that kind of crap, you don't need that crap at all. If you're not adverse to playing online, you can find some amazingly awesome people to game with online. It'll be a lot more supportive, a lot more helpful. So I guess to kind of put a bow on this one for now, Erin, keep at it. We're glad you're here. It's awesome that you contacted us and said these incredibly nice things to us. So thank you very much, Erin. But if it's fun and you're having a good time with it, stick with it. It will get easier.
It does get easier. Yes. That to answer that question directly, it does get easier. And the thing is, though, one thing I want to mention too, Brett, is when she talks about doing it wrong, there's also the not knowing of the rules piece, right? So maybe there's that component where Lacey or Erin, you're maybe not wholly familiar with the rules, and that's okay. And if your group, depending on how they roll, and how they use the rules, like me, I'm not a big rules guy, but maybe I have one in the group that is, and that's fine. And maybe you're in a group that really needs the emphasis on the rules. But typically, a lot of us started out not knowing the rules. Jeremy Crawford's on WotC, and he was on the panel, and he's like, I grew up, I didn't even know there were rules to the game I was playing, that I was having so much fun, right?
Exactly.
You heard it, Brett, right?
Oh, it was
hilarious. Yeah, everybody laughed. So having said that, as time goes on, you'll learn some of the rules. Some of them can be a little daunting, right? I mean, look at these books. I mean, you point this out and say, hey, this is a rule book. People are like, holy cow. And ones that have never played before, they're like, that's a rule book? You need to know everything in there? No, not necessarily. You don't need to know all the classes and everything that they're doing. You might need to know a little bit about what yours does. So yes, it will get easier. Yes, you will learn the rules. You'll learn more about gaming, and you'll have much more fun. And then if it's a chemistry thing with your group, yeah, don't give up, especially here in Madison. I mean, if you're local, holy cow, make sure you look me up too, because, we got a gamer breakfast on Sundays, and you're certainly welcome to show up too as a new person. We'll open our arms up to you so you don't bail because of a couple knuckleheads.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man.
We're never going to get through this episode.
No, we're not. It's going to go along. We're going long.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for writing in, and thanks for putting it out there, because that takes a lot of, gumption.
It absolutely does. That's a lot of spine to step up and say, hey, I'm new here, and and say what you've said there, Erin. So kudos to you. Very good stuff.
Yes. Don't be a stranger. Me and Brett are local. More in ways than one.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, Gods and RPGs. Let's see if we can knock this out in 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I use Gods in my RPGs. Do you?
I do sometimes.
Awesome.
It depends.
Sounds good.
I'll give you my canned answer. Depends.
It depends.
Yeah. There you go. All right. What are we talking about next week, Brett?
I don't fucking know. All right. So this was inspired by the Pure Mongrel. He Mongrel writes us some wonderful long soapboxes on our Google Plus space. We love the Mongrel. And one of our brothers from down under, and he mentioned something a while back about gods. That got me thinking, like, boom, that's a topic idea. I really like that. So, and I don't want to just talk about gods. Hey, how do you run your gods in Greyhawk? How do you run your gods in this D&D world? No. Let's take it a little bit broader than that. So let's start with a simple one. In a D&D fantasy, traditional fantasy type of game, Sean, do you tend to run, I guess, how do you like your gods, right? Do you like to use existing, like pre-gen gods? You want to make up your own? You want to take some, like, a Viking mythology? How do you pick your gods, man?
I want them fried and smothered in gravy.
That's not a bad idea.
Yummy gods. They got to be in my fantasy. The clerics got to know them. It's got to be tied to something. Yeah. How was your question? You're like, you started out saying, like, hey, do you do this? And then you're like,
my question is like, you use them. Great.
Yes.
What extent do you use them? But let's narrow it down a little bit from there. Let me backtrack here. So do you use gods? When you just like, oh, I have a world, do you just say, well, I'm going to play Forgotten Realms, so I'll just use those gods? If you homebrew, do you pick gods from a certain pantheon, like Norse mythology or Celtic or an African one or something? How do you do that?
I see. So if I'm running a session, if I'm running a campaign and it's fantasy based, then it's a pre-published setting, then sure, the individuals, if I'm running, they can use the ones that are in the book. If I'm playing, I will use the ones in the book. However, as a game master, and if somebody wants to play a cleric and they don't want to play somebody that's in the rule book, I am totally down with that. And actually, I would encourage it, because then they can make it up as they go. Like, hey, that's kind of the deal. Like, hey, man, I follow the Brett god. He's really awesome. He's got, like, this cool beard and rides motorcycles and has tattoos all of his body, and I'm spreading the word of the Brett god. And everybody can go, you're crazy, man. I don't even know what you're talking about. But that's the whole thing, right?
You're goddamn right, I'm crazy. Okay, easy now. That's one of our tenets, is to be crazy.
That's right.
Nice. So when I do, if I'm running a pre-gen world, I have a tendency to be a little stiffer. I say, no, I will prefer you to use one of the gods that exist, like in the realms, just use those.
Boo.
Greyhawk, use those.
Boo.
However, the reason I do
that. Wait
is,
a minute. Okay, you're going to go into that. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason I do that is because the rare times I'm actually running in a pre-gen world like Greyhawk, for example, is what I'm telling the group is like, hey, the reason we're doing this is because we want the Greyhawk experience. We want to make sure that we're, hitting all the Greyhawk points. So let's make sure we've got Cuthbert of the Cudgel, and we've got IUs of evil and this and that and so on and so forth. So try to stick within these parameters because it all fits, quote unquote. We want that experience.
Yeah, that's weak. That's weak as shit, man. Because Realms is big, man. Just because you got one cleric walking around worshiping and spreading the word of the Brett god doesn't mean that it it takes the Forgotten Realms out of the Forgotten Realms.
I know. That's your wrong opinion. That's fine. No, I'm kidding. It's just you asked me why. That's generally why I do it.
Well, you're gaming wrong.
Most likely.
Just kidding.
I tend to homebrew more. And what I do when I homebrew is I pull from existing mythologies. In my Avalon world, I've got Viking, Celtic, I've got some Hindu, but I use gods that are fairly well known or look upable, if you will. I might twist them a little bit, and Odin might be a little bit different, or Kali may have a slightly different turn on her approach or whatever. But
you don't actually make up your own?
No, I stopped doing that a while back because what happened is like, this is called, so-and-so the Thunderer. Like, so it's basically Thor, right? So it's basically Thor, but you're calling him Sean. Yeah.
Well, right.
That's right. So fuck all that. I just like, look, I'll use the Viking mythology. No, I twist it add a little extra bit to it. I'll do some research. In my Avalon world, I want an evil god or someone that I thought I could kind of have as like the main bad guy. So Erlig. Erlig happens to be a Mongolian out in that section of Asia, kind of god of death and just craziness. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. A little less known. If I could look it up, I could base it on something. Kind of taking the Ken Hite approach is start with Earth and go from there. Start with things that people have access to. The other reason I do that is for a similar reason that Robert E. Howard did what he did with Hyboria, was taking things that are common, giving them a slight twist, and then everyone has reference points. It makes a homebrew world faster to grab onto, especially when I shouldn't say especially, but because in a fantasy setting, the gods can have a very direct impact on how people live their lives or how they approach different things. So using something like that gives people a connection that they can immediately translate into a setting that's absolutely foreign. They have no reading material on. They can't go look up Realm stuff. They can't go look up Avalon stuff unless it's something I gave them. So it gives them a point of reference that they can just grab onto.
So I will give you that by having, by saying, hey, if you're going to be following the gods of whatever, Forgotten Realms, you have to, because then you do have a reference point, right? You want to, It's canon, it's kind of core. So I'll give you that. But otherwise, I think it's all kind of,
I honestly, I'll tell you what. I'll say, I'll see that. If we were to play Greyhawk, and you would be like, "Look, dude, I know Greyhawk like the back of my fucking hand. I'm going to worship Brett, the motorcycle god." Okay, dude, no motorcycles. Yeah, okay, it'll be a fiery horse. It'll be this thing. It'll be that thing. Okay, fine. You know Greyhawk, Sean. So you can tell me when I look at you and say, "So, what does Cuthbert of the Cudgel think about your god, Brett of the fiery horses?" And Sean goes, "Well, I know enough about Cuthbert, plus this, plus that, to say Brett of the fiery horses looks like this to Cuthbert." Oh, I see. So I can ask you that, and you can translate for me into how that works because you have a reference point. If you've never played it before, don't have any idea, that makes it a little bit harder.
I leave it up to the player, right? If they want to do that, then I expect them to come up with that stuff.
Yes, what I'm saying is that
I'm
if you
empowering the player to create that.
Correct. I just want to make sure the player has the right data points to draw the connections to. That's where I'm coming from.
Gotcha.
Hey, I get where you're.
I'm good, dude. That's okay.
So I guess in this case, I kind of line up my boxcars on that God train, and just kind of get everybody going in that direction. There it is. There we go. That's the God train this time.
Brett's.
So now, the interesting thing to me though is then taking God's fantasy. We could talk about that. Like, oh, how do you do it? Oh, that's neat. Oh, blah blah blah. So when you run a sci-fi game, do you deal with gods in sci-fi?
I have to admit, they don't often come up, but I can see that they could and should.
I think the interesting part to me with sci-fi, especially when you deal with different alien races, anything that's non-human, is then that's when it's really fun for me to make up gods. Like, oh, it's the Vrusks from Star Frontiers. What kind of deity would they worship? Well, you know what? The Vrusks actually don't. They're all atheists. They all believe in science and technology, and therefore they don't believe in any gods. Anybody who does is foolish. Great. The Drellicites or the Vulcans or the Romulans or whatever, what gods may they worship or not. That can make for some interesting stuff. And I like to be able to make them up for that. For my sci-fi stuff is a lot more fun for me. I think it also helps then to enhance that new alien non-human race and make them into something, give them is a moral starting point or a compass of some point to start from, right? You're going to have groups that are like, no, I don't believe in that. I believe in this other God. I don't believe in that God. I believe in this other one. I'm an atheist. I'm agnostic. I'm this, I'm that. But it gives a point of reference then. So, oh, you're a Vrusk, but you're wearing a cross. That's interesting. Yes, I know a lot of my, for my home planet, it's not a big deal, but I converted to Christianity because I was on Earth. It just seemed like, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Oh, neat. Interesting. It gives a twist. It's something different to that race. So I like to do that.
I think that gods in science fiction or even modern settings tend to take a back seat simply because in fantasy, gods typically have a role with clerics and healing. And so there's a more stronger bond, right? You know, if you're not worshiping a god in, say, D&D, one could say, well, then you don't have certain powers or you're a heretic or whatever that is. Where if
Yes.
I'm in science fiction or I'm a modern, Knights Black Agents game, religion kind of takes a back seat, and therefore it's never really.
Well, actually, in Knights Black Agents, it's interesting because depending on the type of vampires you created,
That is true.
religious iconography can have a direct impact on said vampire.
That is true. That was a bad example. I should have mentioned like Spycraft.
Yeah.
Right.
So just a quote unquote regular espionage game.
Yes.
I actually find that it's interesting. Not only does it take a back seat, but, and this is kind of fast tracking to one of the things I think we need to be cautious of as a group. This kind of almost goes to the whole, don't be a dick at the table and be inclusive in a way, is that it can be tempting to have your counter-terrorist group going up against a Muslim terrorist organization. Why not?
Oh boy.
There's always Muslim terrorist organizations. Oh my God. You can't just, there has to be just that regular go-to thing that's in action movies or media or whatever it is. That stuff can be tired, trite, worn out, and depending who's at your table, if you don't know who they are, it could be downright offensive. So, oh, great, you're saying my faith is the one, they're the bad guys in this world. Great.
Ugh.
Really? That's like politics and religion, man. Throwing that shit at the table, say, oh, great. What you're telling me right now, Sean, is that my faith is the one that are the bad guys in your espionage game. Great. Fuck you, Sean. Right. That could lead to some nastiness. So my preference similar to in my fantasy world, when I use not modern, or I should say different mythologies and so on, like Norse or Hindu or Celtic or even some African or South American ones, it gives a point of reference, but it's a fantasy setting. So if I change Quetzalcoatl and turn it into something a little bit different, like, oh, wow, that's kind of neat. That's interesting. Oh, wow, it's a fantasy world. I can change it a little bit. But I even there, excuse me, don't normally go with a Christianity motif, take it in there and then work on that. Right. I tend to pick something that is a little broader or older, or I know there are people out there who do worship Odin. I know there are various different people that do lots of different things in that space. But the short version is you got to be careful in some spaces that you don't make somebody's personal faith, belief, religion a joke, the bad guy, or something that is to be hated, because that can go over really poorly. Sean's giving me the oh my God stare. What's that?
Yeah, man, that's dangerous grounds, man.
It totally is.
That's
it
why
absolutely is.
I would never make. I mean, that's another thing you run into, Brett. If you're gonna bring up the real deal, man, I'd stay away from that crap.
Yeah, so that's kind of the flip, right? Of like, hey, having a point of reference, it sounds great, but when you twist it or you change it or you do something with it, unless it is well known, like, hey, it's Loki, he's a trickster god, he's kind of a pain in the ass. Okay, I get that. Everybody understands that. That's kind of how he is, and that's what we're going to work with.
Now you're offending all the Loki worshippers.
No, I think the Loki worshippers would be more than happy to say, yeah, he's a trickster god and he's kind of sneaky.
Okay. I don't know because I don't worship.
He's still chained to a rock anyway. Anyhow, point is that when I run my modern games, right, when I run espionage or Call of Cthulhu or something along those lines, the evil group, if it's a religious based group, it tends to be a bizarre cult, right? Which is why Cthulhu is great, because it's fucking evil and weird and twisted. You worship Yog Sothoth. What the hell's wrong with you? Again, it's a made up thing. When I run an espionage game, you're going after a counter-terrorist group. It is not a religious-based terrorist group. It's more of a group that believes in absolute anarchy, or they hate this thing, or it's kind of the James Bond versus Spectre almost. You draw a that's one of the reasons for me anyway, like multinational corporations and the whole cyberpunk piece of global spanning corps and individuals who may be evil using gangs and using different groups and companies to be evil is much more fun to me than going after saying it's a religious based thing. in my modern settings. Fantasy, for whatever reason, if I go in there and say, hey, guess what? Odin is actually kind of, he's kind of a fucker in this world. But it's because of this, this, and this. Maybe I've just been very fortunate. I've not had any Odin worshippers at my table who've, punched me or been offended. But even when I have taken some of the Hindu mythology of Kali or whatever it is, I did a little research, said, oh, this is how it works. Okay, I'm going to add this component to it. And essentially work to keep it as what I hope to be as non-offensive as possible. Because again, if you're starting with something that is moderately to very active in the world, again, knowing my table helps. And also knowing that if I'm running something at a con and if I'm at a table, I want to be as inclusive as possible. I don't want to have something that is, vile, that is actually vile because I took, this wonderfully nice Christian sect and just decided that they're a horrible group of people. That can be really offensive and hurt people's feelings and break friendships and destroy things. So you got to be careful with it, I guess, is a short version.
Yeah. You have to also, I wonder though, didn't Mongrel talk about gods walking around as humans or as a person or persons?
Yeah, that's another component that we do. I mean, if you do let's see, American Gods by Neil Gaiman, having some of the older gods are actual entities or things that you can interact with. White Wolf did Scion, which you're children of gods. You could be a child of Thor, you could be child of Set and various different other deities. Maybe you're interacting directly with deities in some of these games.
Right.
I think in fantasy, it's a little bit easier to swallow, and urban fantasy, because it has fantasy in the title, makes it a little bit simpler. But once you go to what I would consider straight up, right, espionage game or a police procedural game or something that you're not talking about, if you're fighting a horrible monster and then you don't want to tie that horrible monster to a specific religious group in the real world. If you're playing in a real world setting, you rather need it to be a cult, something different, something that's a debased thing that's long forgotten or whatever it is. That's more acceptable. It's a strong phrase, but I think it's more palatable and makes more sense. And it's something in the game world. It's a bit cliche, but I think it's worthy. Okay. Sorry. Totally lost you there.
No,
I totally went off the rails there, didn't I? A little more than usual. Anyway, so what do you think about this, Sean? I mean, gods in your games. The other component is even in your fantasy games, do you have encounters do you have the gods take a very active hand in your games? When you do have gods, okay, so let's take the whole safety of the table. Let's push that to the side for a second. When you do have gods in a game that are either you made them up, you're using an existing mythology or pantheon or whatever, do you have a tendency to have them be involved or not?
Spiritually, probably, more than likely. Maybe interactively, if it's Dragonlance, kind of like maybe there's a hint of them walking amongst the men and women of the land in a particular form. I mean, I think there is elements of that in a lot of religions where, they're an element of, they've come and descended upon.
Yeah.
Man
I did that in my bad magic game. The guys met Satan. So that was,
they make a deal at the crossroads.
A couple people, I think, one person did. Everybody else was like, no, I'd rather die. It was pretty interesting because a lot of them were on their deathbed at the time.
You didn't allow them to sell their soul and become rock stars?
I tried, but most of them were like, no, fuck you, Brett. I won't do that.
You got to entice a man with some
I did.
fame and money. And
I gave Alpha was on his deathbed. I'm like, look, dude, I can save you. I can save your character. All you have to do is this one favor. That's all you have to do. He's like, no, fuck you. He shot Satan in the face. So
you got to do it more than like saving them. You got to make it like, hey man, you're going to be the you're going to be the president of the United States, man.
No, that wasn't Cookies. That wasn't his deal. Anyway, so you don't tend to have a very strong-handed. Like, if the paladin fucks up, does the god visit him in a dream and say, "Dude, you've been fucking up. I'm gonna take your powers away, you dick"? Do you do that, or how interactive?
I like to, and it depends on the game, but I would like to. The problem is if you do that and the person's playing a cleric and their powers don't work, you could probably piss off a player. So you gotta be open to that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, hey man, if you're worshiping Cuthbert and you're not doing the deeds and you're going against them, there's repercussions for that. Maybe it's not even losing the powers as much as it is like falling out of favor with the church.
I was just gonna say that's Dungeon Crawl Classics all over, right?
Yeah.
You get disfavor.
Yeah, get out of disfavor. Yep.
Yeah.
And then hey, throw in the Inquisition and Inquisitors hunting you down because you're going rogue, and I mean, there's all kinds of role playing stuff that you can throw in there, and good stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the games like Dungeon Crawl Classics, that has a mechanic in it that Sean and I are fairly intimate with, along the, with disfavor and so forth. If you're a cleric and you're fucking up, these are bad things that can happen to you. The other point, though, I think is we've talked about this about other things before, is that you have to ease in, right? If the cleric has been screwing up for the last 6 levels, you feel like, that's it, I've had enough. Cuthbert of the Cudgel comes down and strips you of all your clerical powers. The player, rightfully so, for the last 6 months of gaming goes, what the fuck? Really? Seriously, dude? Now you're going to take it all away? Well, you've been screwing up for a while. No warning, no nothing. You never warned anybody. You never said, hey, by the way, this is how this is going to go. I think it's a piece that if you don't have a mechanical component from a role-playing perspective, as you just said, if you want the gods to be heavy-handed or have a stronger, firmer hand in your world, either they're physically there, they could walk up to you or visit you in a dream or something and warn you. So that way, the cleric of Cuthbert of the Cudgel of Greyhawk has been misbehaving. He or she hasn't been doing things right. Angela's playing this cleric. Angela's being annoying. She's being kind of a jerk. She's not doing what Cuthbert would want. She's visited in her dreams a few times. She encounters a beggar on the street, a man with a cane, and pretty soon it becomes a guy with a club, and it just becomes more and more obvious, and then the powers are taken away for a while. Well, and then when the righteous anger comes up, you can say, look, Angela, I warned you. Oh, that's right, you did. Right, so you don't have the same shock and awe factor of suddenly you're not a paladin anymore, even though you're 10th level, and you've been acting this way for 10 levels. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
I think that's an important piece, but yeah. I love the idea of having them and making them role-playing components. I think it was a piece in my youth of growing into the hobby that was overlooked, except as a punitive measure by the dungeon master who got sick of the paladin abusing his or her power and sick of the cleric being a dick. And then they go, sorry, your god doesn't like that, whack. It was just a punitive, weird thing that a dungeon master would do. I think there's better ways to handle it now, even if you don't have mechanics, to turn it into a role-playing experience.
I concur.
Cool. All right, man, we're going long, so should we move this on?
We shall.
Yeah, folks, if you've got better ideas of gods and whatnot, let us know.
I rolled 2 to 4 miscellaneous points, gaming and Greek. What I want to share with you.
I've got nothing.
I got a couple.
And we got a couple from listeners.
I'm
going to say I'm behind because I was on vacation. I was up in Upper Michigan deer hunting, so I was a slack ass because I was on vacation. I'll pick it up next time, Sean. I promise.
Okay. Matthew Mercer's, he's from Critical Role, GM tips on customizing creatures. It's a video on Geek and Sundry, if you aren't familiar with Matt. He did some good GMing, so check that out. My second one, Marvel RPG Hack meets Edge of the Empire rules set. That's on Orican's Lair, which I think we featured in a prior show. The person who writes on that blog does put out some good stuff. So if you're looking to maybe look at Marvel, but use the Edge of the Empire rules, check that out.
Very cool. And Edge of the Empire rules are pretty freaking fun. So I could see that being a lot of, man, especially with the The advantage, disadvantage, the despair, the whole, all that stuff. That feels superhero to me, man. All right, from listeners, we've got 2, and they're both around maps. Hawk Sparrow hit us with one about how to create isometric dungeon maps. Got a link out there in the show notes to that. And Azrael Rocha hit us up with some free maps on DriveThruRPG. There's a product out there, free, and it's got maps. So hey, as a guy who likes to keep my iPad full of maps because you never know when I'm going to have to run a dungeon, I need a map of something. This is good stuff. And at GameHoleCon, Sean and I were gifted each a roll of isometric map paper. So Hawk Sparrow's link is timely, as always.
Yes, the isometric gaming paper by Gaming Paper.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. That was it for Die Roll. Thanks for writing in those
Absolutely.
guys and keep them coming. Want to also thank those reviews on iTunes from DM Dad, James Sweetland LaValle, who's got to be Dan LaValle. Thanks, Dan, who's one of our patrons. Thanks for writing up the reviews, all 3 of you. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us this week. Next week, Brett, do you know what we're talking about yet or no?
I'm not sure. I was thinking I might hit up we might start with the Law versus Chaos thing that John hit us up with, because that one's got me interested. But I'm not sure yet. I got a couple other ideas banging around in my head. I'm not sure yet. It'll be a mystery. You have to tune in next week just to find out.
Ooh. All right. Well, for those that have tuned in and continue to listen to us, thank you so much. Otherwise, this has been another episode of Gaming ABS. I'm one of your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night and good game and all.
Episodes of Gaming MBS come to you with the help from the following patrons: Christian Sexy Voice Serrano, Kevin Lovecraft, Joe Swick, Brett's Biggest Fan, Jeff Rademacher, Forrest DeGarry, Mark Anthony Benedetti, Bruce Cunnington, Eric Jeppesen, Andy Hall, Misdirected Mark Productions, Sean Nicholson, Tim Jensen, Chris Steele, Old School DM, The Knights of the Night Crew, Palladian, Jason Blaylock, Remy Bilodeau, Jason Hobbs, Merkel Froelich, Wayne Lumrunner Humphrey, James Carpio, Not Caprio, Pure Mongrel, Lord Tentacle, Corey Johnston, Eric Tankar, Brandon Barnes, Mark Tasaka, Brett Pazinski, Tim Shorts, Eileen Barnes, Chad Knight, Dan LaValle, C.W. Mellencamp, Nicholas Abruzzo, Victor Wyatt, Tony the Butcher Baker, and Craig Huber. For the cost of a coffee shop coffee, you can support the show for an entire month. Visit gamingnbs.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. Thank you.